As someone who has long advocated for male victims of domestic violence and was a victim himself, and also as someone who ran a peer support group for male victims, I know all too well how little support, caring, compassion, and sympathy there is for men who are abused. I also know how in most areas of the country, indeed the world, there are little to no services or shelters available for male victims and their children to go to. In today's society, when we talk about domestic violence, the focus is almost entirely on women and the need to support them when they are the victims. Now, to be clear, those women do indeed need support and nothing should be taken away from them. But we also need to ask, why are we deliberately not providing the very same services and support to male victims? Why are we forcing men and their children to suffer in silence? The fact of the matter is, contrary to the narrative that's been pushed for over 50 years now, there are male victims of domestic violence. A lot of them. The statistics don't lie. Numerous studies have shown all along that there is a significant number of male victims, just as many as there are female victims. More telling is that more recent studies are showing that women are more likely to perpetuate violence against their intimate partner than men are. And let's not forget, men are also far, far more likely to not report their victimhood than women are. The primary reason being, of course, that when they do try and speak up and get help for the trauma that they are suffering, they are frequently met with disbelief, stigma, or outright dismissal. Nowhere more so than from those who claim to be advocates for domestic violence victims. The almost 3,000 shelters that exist to help women in many cases actively deny assistance to male victims, or at most do the bare minimum. While in virtually every city and all states there are shelters, services, and places for women to go to escape their abuser, for men, the story is completely different. The sad truth is there are only 2 shelters in the entire United States that are dedicated to helping male victims. 2. Yet when you try to show these facts to people, when you try to talk to them about the lack of support and services for male victims, they don't want to hear it. Oh, they'll show plenty of support for female victims, but when it comes to male victims, they'll show derision. They'll mock them for being weak or unmanly. And in many cases, dare I say most, they deny they are victims by saying things like, you must have done something to deserve it, or you're just trying to hide the fact that you're the abuser. Something shelter employees almost always say to male victims who come through their doors. The absolute undeniable fact is that unfortunately, when men experience domestic violence, no one really cares. And that needs to change. The best way to do that is for those of us who are victims to speak out and share our stories. Sadly, yes, you are going to get mocked. You are going to be ridiculed. You will be told that you're the abuser, not the victim, especially by those who seek to deny any services to men because their agenda only allows them to support women. It's time we stood up and asked ourselves, have you or someone you know ever been a victim of domestic violence as a man? Did you feel the system was stacked against you and men in general? Do you feel safe in contacting law enforcement or going to a domestic violence shelter for help? Do you think DAs and the courts will hold your abuser accountable, or will they seek to put the blame on you? Many men report feeling unsupported by law enforcement, the court system, and frankly, even friends and family when they try to seek help. This issue can be compounded by harmful stereotypes that men should be tough enough to handle the abuse, or that it's impossible for women to be abusers. It's time we break these myths. Domestic violence knows no gender, and every victim, regardless of sex, deserves justice and protection. Men who experience abuse should have the same access to shelters, legal resources, and emotional support as anyone else. No one should have to suffer in silence or feel that their pain doesn't matter because of outdated gender roles or agendas. If you're a man who has faced domestic violence, your story matters Let's start an open dialogue about this critical issue and work towards a more balanced understanding of domestic abuse that includes men. Things aren't going to change unless we as men stand up and speak out as one voice, because only if and when we come together and support one another can we truly be heard. Only if we come together can we advocate for better support systems, raise awareness, and demand equal treatment for all victims, regardless of gender. Look, I get it. Standing up and speaking out is risky. It does mean you're going to get attacked. You're going to be labeled and you're going to be ridiculed. All you got to do is look at what happens to me. But until we refuse to let them bully us into silence, until we say enough is enough, that men who are abused deserve the very same support, caring, and compassion that women get, until we change that narrative and say that domestic violence isn't a woman's issue, it's a human one, nothing is going to change. It's time we stand up and speak out for all male victims. They deserve nothing less.